What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Today we're going to take a look at the MagicX 135. This is a handheld that works both vertical and horizontal. I did that wrong. Works vertical and horizontal. And you can tell by this neat little button scheme they got going on here. And we're going to check this thing out today. Let's take a look. All right, let's start this off with an unboxing. And this box is it didn't want to pull apart for me very well, but we got her off. So here we got the handheld right up here on top. It's actually pretty snug in here, which is really nice to see. We'll put that off to the side. Take this bottom thing off. Now we got the origami accordion. You can pause it anywhere you need if you need to read the directions. This is actually very helpful. There are definitely some things you might want on there, especially if you didn't have a memory card come with it. I'll try to go over it with you too. Let's get this USB-A to USB-C cable out. The damn thing's stuck. I couldn't get this cable out. I had to use the tweezers. Really struggled through this one. But eventually, it came out like anything. I almost had to rip the box apart, but we got her out of there. And there's a USB-A to USB-C cable. Woohoo! Yeah. The last thing we got here is we do have an acrylic screen cover that did come in the box, which is really nice to see. I love it when they do include a screen cover. Now, I didn't get mine with the memory card, so you're not going to see that here in the unboxing because I did not get a memory card, which may or may not have been a mistake. I don't know. I figured it out eventually. And let's get the handheld out here. And here we go. It's an interesting handheld. It has 2 D-pads instead of 2 sticks, which is pretty cool. But checked over everything, and everything looks pretty good on here. So now we'll go through and do a walkthrough of the device itself. All right, we'll get the screen nice and clean. I'm sure it'll be dirty by the time we're done with this walkthrough. All right, look at that. I already got dust on it. All right, so we will start at the top like we always do. We do have our shoulder buttons, shoulders and triggers. They are kind of interesting in here. We will discuss this a little bit further. They don't actually wrap around the edges, which I think is one of the first times I've ever seen that in a handheld like this. We also do have an additional trigger here on the top, and we will discuss that as well, or bumper, I guess. And we also do have a Type-C port for charging. On the back here, we do have some ventilation. That is just to help cool down the CPU. No big deal. On the right-hand side over here, we do have the micro SD card slot. And so that will be the card. And I will kind of tell you how to set one of those up if you got this without the card. There's a $20 difference when you buy this from MagicX, whether you get a card or not. But if you do get a card, it does come with a 128 gig card for $20, at least right now with the prices on their website. On the left-hand side over here, we do have the volume up and down buttons. On the bottom down here, which looks a lot like the top, we do have that extra bumper there, and then we do have our power button right here on the bottom. And then we do also have 2 speakers, and they are downward firing, unfortunately, but they are right here on the bottom on the left and right-hand side. Now, I keep getting confused when I pick this up of which side's the top and which side's the bottom, and as you could tell, you could kind of go either way, I guess. I mean, it really does only sensically make sense in one direction, but when you pull this out of your pocket, sometimes it takes you a second to kind of adjust, just to give you a heads up. But here we do have a home and back button right up here in the upper left-hand corner. We do have start and select down here too. These buttons are actually pretty soft, not too bad. We do have our face buttons, which actually feel pretty good to me anyways, as far as this device goes. They remind me of some of the other MagicX devices, so not too shabby. These D-pads are pretty good. Which is good because there are 2 D-pads on here, and then we do have 1 Hall effect joystick. And this joystick here, you can actually swap out and put hype sticks or whatever else you'd want to put in there. It's the same kind of Hall effect stick that they have been using for a while over at MagicX, and you're going to see the same ones on like a Retroid or AYN device as well. So that kind of gives you a good look, and then we do have our 3.5-inch display. All right, now for the specs of the MagicX 135, it does come with a MediaTek Helio G85, which is pretty awesome for a handheld that would be great for GBA, and we'll get into a little bit of that here in just a minute. Its GPU is a Mali G52 MC2 at 1000 megahertz, and it does have 4 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM. 64 gigs of internal storage with up to 512 expandable on the SD card. It does have a 3.5-inch 960 by 640 IPS touch display at 500 nits of brightness. That is a great display for a 3.5-inch handheld. 960 by 640 is definitely better than most. It is running Wi-Fi 5, and it does have Bluetooth 5.0. The I/O on the device is USB-C. It does have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and obviously that memory card. It is running Android 12. It does have the Play Store, and it is using what's called the Dawn Launcher, which is kind of like using a version of Android, but it really is Daijishu made specifically for the MagicX devices. We've seen it on other devices before. I'll throw some links down on my thingamabob for some other reviews I've done on MagicX devices that have also included the Dawn launcher in case you have any questions. It does about 4,300 milliamp battery, which is about 5 to 7 hours, they say. I'd say it's closer to 4.5 to 6, but still very good battery for a device of this size. And of course, the charging is done through that USB-C, but it is 5 volts, 2 amps instead of 1 amp, and it is 10 watts for charging. We will test the charging out. It is very dependent on what charger you use. For instance, if I use like a 65 watt charger versus a 140 watt charger versus just your regular, type C charger, that's going to be the 5 volts, 1 amp. It really can vary on your charging time and actually how much power is going through. In this case, the more power, the better. But if you are somebody who uses something like a PC handheld, you are able to get away with plugging that USB-C cable into this device, which is great, especially if you're traveling at all. You don't have to carry extra cables. It does have that 3D Hall effect stick that we talked about before. It does have these Tate shoulder buttons right here, which are going to be the top and the bottom, or left and right. Kind of interesting. I think maybe the first time I've ever reviewed a device that has something like that. In fact, this might be the first one that does. It does have the dual D-pads with a vibrating motor, and that's about it. It does weigh 189 grams, which I don't know what to compare that to right now. My brain is fried. We'll get into this a little bit. We will talk about the Dawn launcher and kind of how to set up your memory card if you got one of these devices and didn't get a card. It took me a minute to kind of figure it out. It made sense once I did it, but you can actually get it to write the ROM scheme to your memory card for you. That way you'll have all your folders. They'll be named correctly, and it's just going to make your life a whole lot easier. I actually went through and made them all myself and then realized this and then had to go and transfer those back over. So we'll take a look at kind of how to do that here real quick. And I'll show you what it looks like when you start the device if you don't already have a memory card made for it, and then what will happen once you do. Now, when you first boot this up, it's going to be pretty blank, but it does actually include pretty much every emulator you're going to need already built into the Dawn launcher. And you can see that if we go over here to applications, we actually have everything from Azahar to Dolphin. We do have DuckStation. We have M64 Plus. We have different versions of it as well. We also do have Nether SX2, so if you want to play PS2, and yes, this will play PS2 and GameCube, if you couldn't tell by the Nether and Dolphin emulators. It does play Vita, sort of. I'm not exactly sure why they decided to put Vita 3K on here. I mean, it kind of works, but that'll be an option. But the first thing you're going to see when you do turn this thing on is this screen right here. And what this screen does is tells you that you need to have a library path. Now, you can't really do much until you put a memory card in. But once you hit that, you're going to add a path to it. It will ask you where you want to do it. Once you pick your storage device, which obviously I don't have in here right now, but if you just go here and you'll hit your storage device, you will be able to just put a game folder on your memory card, and then it will write all the folders for every system that this will support, which is kind of cool because then you know what you can and can't play when you're all said and done. So that part is really kind of nice. But until you do that, you can't see any of your games that are installed. You can go to the individual applications and play them through the applications. If you want to, you can go in and set them up individually. So if you don't want to use the Dawn launcher, you are totally welcome to do that. It's not a requirement, but it definitely makes things pretty easy. Another thing they built into Dawn launcher, which is pretty sweet, is they do have game switcher modes similar to like a Miu Mini, which you would see with Onion OS. But here we go. So everything looks kind of pretty much, anybody who's ever used IGShow is going to look like that. And if you haven't, it's going to be a platform specifically for playing games on, so it's not going to look like a traditional Android, which can be good and bad at times. You can turn off Dawn launcher too if you want, and you could just run straight Android. You do have the ability to, because these are registered, you can actually use the Google Play Store, and I would recommend doing that, specifically because some of these emulators are going to need to be updated. And a couple of them are already, outdated by the time they get to you because these are updating daily or nightly, I guess. So you'd be better off being in the Play Store just so you can do that. Now, if you're comfortable doing the updates yourself through GitHub, then by all means go that route. You will save yourself a little bit of memory for playing games. If you're not signed into Google services, they take up a lot of memory, or a pretty significant amount of memory. Now, this does have 4 gigs, but it is running the G85. Now, we've had the G99 with very similar specs before. Last year, we did have the A&E Pocket Micro, which was running a G99 with similar screen size and everything like that. Both these devices would be good for GBA with a 3.2 display. This does have a really good resolution, so did that, but You know, it is a really good GBA display specifically for that aspect ratio. But this device is less than half the cost of the A&EO device. And this one has 2 D-pads. I mean, when do you see 2 D-pads on a handheld? It's kind of a unique experience, and it's kind of cool. It works good for more games than you'd think because you can actually play 3DS and DS games on here, as well as play vertical shooters and things like that from back in the old arcade days. I will show you a trick here too real quick once I get this rebooted with my memory card in it on how to better take advantage of the vertical mode so that you're not left frustrated when you just hit the button for it and it doesn't do anything for you. So let's do that. I'll get my card in here and then I will kind of go through a little bit with the operating system. Again, I do have links down on my Thingamabob for other devices I have done the Dawn launcher on before, so I don't want to get too in depth because I've already gone through this, and I understand that your time is valuable. Now that we got her loaded back up, I think that you are going to see the advantage of the way that this operating system works and how beautiful the Dawn launcher really is. I'm glad that they did take some pointers from a front end that I myself and a lot of the community already used, which, side note, Daijutsu did just get the first update in, I don't even know, probably over a year. So they did just do an update on that, so it might be time to go back and revisit it if you've gone away. I don't know if they're going to continue doing updates, but they did just do an update. So maybe we'll see another update here to the Dawn launcher as well. It is a really, really smooth working system. Really, it is. Can I say really again? Did I say really enough times? Really? Sorry about that. It has been a long day, but it does look really fantastic. And what you're going to see here, and I don't have every system loaded up, but I do have a fair amount of them, and they will all be on here ready to play for you. Everything from Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. Now, there is one thing I don't like, and we might as well just talk about this now. Some of the systems on here don't have system art for them, specifically PS2 and GameCube, and they are kind of a stretch to play to begin with. You are going to be playing some lighter weight titles on those, but you are going to be limited on what you are going to be playing on them. So just be aware that it's not going to be you're not going to be playing Black on PS2, for instance. This isn't going to make it happen. You're going to see the same thing on the GameCube side as well. But here's GameCube. We don't have system art. Where here, again, like here's Game Boy Color. We have system art. So you can actually tell where these are specifically. Well, when we hit PS2, you'll see the same thing will happen. We just won't have art for the system. And it's okay. I mean, it doesn't affect anything. I just think it looks a little janky when it's like that. And I'm sure that they'll probably do an update. If you're listening, MagicX, definitely do an update on this and get just some art in here. Because you only have the choice of 2 different themes for this right now. And maybe the community will come out with some themes. But with those 2 themes that are available, it's actually not on either of them, as far as I could tell, because the other theme, I believe, just has like a random background that's on pretty much everything. I don't think it has it on there. I know it says it. Well, let's find out. I'll show you how easy it is to change the theme here. So what we have to do here oh man, I've got to figure out where to put this camera. This is not a good spot for it. Hold on. Let's move. That's not going to do what I want it to do. There we go. That's a little bit better. All right. So in order to do this, we just need to go over here to our settings tab. And it's kind of hard to read on here, which is crazy because I'm shooting in 4K. So if you go to platform wallpaper selection, which is what we're seeing for the wallpapers. Sorry, it's not the theme. This is the part where it does this. But if we go to the other one, it's going to make me restart Dawn Launcher. And then see how PlayStation here, different than the other systems where they have like the same back-end box art. And PlayStation 2 is just kind of a random image. And same with GameCube whenever we get to it. Same exact image. So neither one actually has anything there, which is kind of unfortunate. But worse things could happen. I like the way this one looks better, so we're just going to go with this one. Now, this is a touchscreen as well, so you can, do your normal stuff you would do in Android, sliding up and down, not a big deal. I guess drop downs, that's what I'm trying to say. But if you do use your trigger buttons here, you can switch between these 4 different options, which you have platform, chosen, app, and settings. Under chosen, you can have all your games, your favorites. You can put different things underneath this chosen tab. Last played. This will give you my 13 last played games. And then you can also go over here to the apps section. And this is where I was showing you before, where you can see the different emulators. If you have games that you download from Google Play, you can go in here. They'll be in the games tab. Under tools here, this is where you're going to find the Play Store. You're going to find Google Chrome, stuff like that. Or you can just go to all, and this will have everything you have installed on the device. I just leave it on the emulator tab because every once in a while I like to go into the emulator individually versus going the other way. One of the biggest reasons why you would probably buy this device is to play things in Tate mode or vertical. And that would be a lot of stuff that you're going to want to play. Like that is going to be your old school arcade games. So if we go here in the multiple arcade machine emulator, otherwise known as MAME, we can pick a game, and I'm going to show you a little secret here. So we'll just go to 1943 here, Midway. It's going to be in the wrong direction. So then what we're going to want to do is we want to slide down here from the top. Here, I'll do it over here for you. So you're going to want to slide down here from the top. And this is going to give you the option, if you hit this button right here, to flip it to 90 degrees. So let's play this bad boy. So we'll hit select to add a coin, and we'll hit start. And you're going to find out what the problem is. You can fix this in RetroArch if you want to. You're going to have to go through and do it for every individual system. But I have no control. I can shoot, I believe, but I have no control. You're actually flying with your joystick right now. So that's kind of a crappy way to do it. So if you want to fix this, you either have to fix this in RetroArch or you fix it prior to entering the game. And so I'll show you this. So we'll exit this game. Amber alert. Before you actually enter the game, you're going to hit Y. This is going to bring you into the options for this specific game. You can go through and change what the CPU mode is. So if you want performance or balance or power saving, you can make those decisions right here. Now, the one thing you're going to want to do if you're going to want to play games rotated is go to screen rotation. You're going to choose vertical. And now you don't have to do that drop down anymore. You just have to go into the game, and the game will actually load vertically. So it's going to be loading into Tate mode. So we'll add that credit. We'll start the game. All the controls should work correctly. Fingers crossed. I have not found a reason to use these bumpers yet on the sides. They're kind of cool. I tried to do it with pinball, and I couldn't get it to work. So I haven't used them at all yet. But now we can actually play this device the way that it was meant to be played, without having to put our hand up on the top in order to be able to control where we're going. So pretty cool. It's a cool trick. It works in all the different emulators, so depending on what you want to play. So if you want to play it vertically and it's going to go through something like RetroArch, well, specifically through RetroArch, it will go into Tate mode if you do set up that button. Also, all your buttons in RetroArch will work correctly. You won't be struggling like I was because I forgot that you had to use sideways buttons instead of up and down when I was trying to get through to get back out of that last game. But any game you're going to want to play that way, you're just going to want to go in and do that. Now, like, this wouldn't be a game you'd want to play that way, but this would still give you that option to do a vertical screen if you wanted to. Now, the default is always going to be horizontal. Unfortunately, they're just not set up separately in the system here to be any other way. Sorry, I'm still trying to get the new studio layout figured out. My side cam isn't really hitting where I wanted it to, so we'll try to focus on this main overhead cam, and it seems like we're getting a little bit better angle. It's also a little bit shaky today, and I think it's because of the height of this desk, so I'm going to have to figure out how to bolt this thing to the wall, but we will figure that out as we go along. Moving right along. One other thing you might want to look at in settings here is if you do scroll down, you can get to game switcher mode. If you do turn this on, it will work similar to what it does in Onion OS if you've used a MIUI device, like I had stated earlier. And all that really means is when you go to back out, it will pull up all the catalog of games you played recently, and you can just hop from one game to the other, and it will start you exactly where you got off before on your old game, and it will pause your game right where you're at. So you can just keep hopping between games without having to go through the whole load up and everything else like that. So definitely something that's good to have on. Now, you are able to do input tests right through here as well. So if you want to test out all your device inputs, your vibrate, all that stuff, you can do all that through here. It doesn't trace on here, but I don't see any cardinal snapping just by default anyways. And then it's start and select to get out. So that's kind of the basics of it. We will talk about kind of my thoughts on the device after we do a little bit of gameplay on here. I will run through some games. I might toss in a PS2 and GameCube game at the end, but you're going to see a wide variety of games, anything from Pico 8, using Fake 8 in RetroArch, going through the different systems, doing a little bit of vertical play, also some DS. And I was going to throw some 3DS on there, but it's so hard to see with the size of the screen. Definitely not my favorite device for 3DS, but as a company, MagicX has done a really good job incorporating DS in their devices recently. One good example would be the last device they had, and that is this right here. This is the 040. So weird that the 40 came out before the 35, but so we have the 135. This is the 040, and this is a DS device. And this is one of the most fun ways to play DS if you don't want to play DS on a DS, and I'm thinking like DS Lite, I guess. If you don't want to play DS Lite on a DS, this is the way to do it. It's not super powerful, but it works great for those specific games. I guess before we do get into game testing, we should talk about the power of this and why it is able to play some of this stuff. And I would say the Helio G85 chipset sits somewhere between the very popular Retroid Pocket 2S and the Embernic 405M, or the 505, which I have. I don't have a 405, but I do have a 505. this does kind of fit right between the two of these as far as power goes, with the Retro Pocket 2S running the Unisoc T610 versus the T618. So kind of right there. I wish I had the 405 to compare to, because I think that would make more sense as far as screen size and everything. You know, this has an OLED display. It's much bigger. You know, this is obviously a smaller device, so it does fit a little bit closer, I think, with the 2S itself. But if you could play it on the 2S, you'll be able to play it on here, which means, yes, you can play Wind Waker on here. Kind of hard to see on a 3.5-inch display, but it is a very sharp display, so it is doable. All right, so let's get into some gameplay testing here. And then we'll wrap up on the back end, and I'll give you my advice on this device. So hopefully that gives you a good feel for the MagicX 135. It is a very unique device, but it is powerful. It does fit between some of the most, sought after devices, 2.5, 3 years ago with the 2S and like the 405 or 505s from Anbernic. So it is a powerful enough device to play some good headwind games. You are still going to struggle with a few different games that are out there, but that's just any retro emulator. So let's talk about it. Part of this to me does feel like a device that was made 3 years ago. MagicX is really good with making superior build quality on their handhelds. This one here is no different, yet completely different. The plastic feel on this one feels like a toy, and I understand that it is a toy, so don't get me wrong. But as far as MagicX devices go, I think I've reviewed every device they've ever released, and this is the most toy-like one out of all of them that they have released. Now, I've looked, the seams, everything are matching up, but the plastic that they use for the body of this just doesn't really scream quality. In fact, it screams very cheap device. It's got that pow kitty rattle to it. There's something to that, and so it just doesn't feel like the premium devices that they have. It is very hard to use in Tate mode for long periods of time, which is specifically what this device is made for. Now, if you have different hands than mine, it may be different for you, but it is pretty top heavy, and I just can't find a use for these side buttons that makes any sense. The whole device moves around so much when you hit them that and they're kind of stiff, so it's, maybe over time they would work in and it would be fine. But right now, I don't have a use for these buttons, which I think is a big part of the gimmick for it. Now, you may be different than me, and you might find a good use for those buttons. And I think a lot of people will. I just don't. It's just not comfortable for me to sit like this, because now you're stretched out sort of in a weird, funky way. The other thing is the shoulder buttons here. With your shoulders not wrapping around, it is difficult to hit your shoulders and your triggers. Now, your triggers are roughly in the same spot as they would be on any other device, but any other device would have them raised, where these ones here are not. For example, if we look at the 505 here, you can see the trigger button is always raised, right? So you're a raised button, so you can actually kind of differentiate the two. Or the other option would be to go, instead of inline, but go stacked shoulders and triggers like they do here on the Retroid Pocket 2S. So the stacked option would be good too. But this is something that's kind of specific to MagicX for the most part, is they tend to keep their buttons pretty much level. Now, these ones aren't hard to hit. Part of it is the way that your hands actually fall onto this device. It does make them really easy because you use the pads, or like the knuckles, the first knuckle, to kind of hit the shoulders, and then your fingertips to hit the triggers. So these kind of get away with it. Here with the 135, because they're inset, so the other ones are outwards, because they're inset, they are just difficult to hit. It is easier to hit the trigger than it is to hit the actual shoulder button, which I think might be the first handheld like this that I've ever had that problem with. But usually you're hitting the shoulder button again with this first knuckle, and because it doesn't wrap around or anything, you don't have that. And because they don't stick up above at all, which I understand they're trying to make it pocketable, but it does make it difficult to do. That would be one thing to keep conscious of too. This stick here, if you decide you want a bigger stick, I wouldn't blame you. And you definitely could put a bigger or taller stick in here, which I think would make this easier to use if you're going to play arcade and horizontal, for instance. But also it's going to make this device less pocketable. So I think everything they did here, their design philosophy here, was really good. I just don't know that it works the way that I would want it to. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on here is charging. Specifically, so this is going to be 5 volts, 2 amps at 10 watts is what this device charges at. But when I run a charging test on here, right now we're getting 5 volts, 0.46 amps, and like 2 watts. But it does show that I have a max of 5 volts, 2 amps. So it's kind of interesting. So this is on a 65 watt charger, and it is not hitting its full potential on charging. Now, if I plug in a 140 watt charger, it's pretty much there. This seems like it's designed almost to run off of the same charger you'd run a PC handheld off of, which is great for travel and stuff, but it's going to charge really slow on anything else, which is really weird. I just haven't seen that before, but typically when we get handhelds like this, they won't charge on those more powerful chargers. So I guess you have to take the pros with the cons, which is going to be better for you. And maybe you'll have a different charger that will treat this differently. That, unfortunately for me, is not what I'm dealing with in my charging situation. It's just not charging like that. But I mean, that's whatever. It still charges just fine. I haven't had any charging issues with it. It's just a matter of how fast you want to charge it. And if you want to take advantage of that 10 watt charging power, so you can really kind of get more of a rapid charge out of it. But all in all, I think that this is a great device, and I think it fits right in that, below $100 category. Right now, I believe it's $85 on the MagicX website. So I think that's a pretty good deal. I don't know when they're going to raise it another $10 or so. Looks like it's going to be maxing out about $95. So it's still going to stay below the $100 threshold. So I think it's priced about perfectly. This thing plays some fantastic Game Boy Advance. It is a 3.5-inch screen. It's really high resolution and makes those games look good. And you can do some upscaling with some of those lower end systems too, with your Game Boys, your Game Boy Advance, all that kind of stuff. You can upscale those systems. PSP is still going to be playing between 2 times resolution, 1 and 2 times resolution, depending on the game and how heavy it is. Most PS2 games you're going to be playing at 1x, and that's fine. I mean, think about that. You're playing a PS2 game on a device that's under $100. You really can't complain if you have to play at 1x, and it is a beautiful little display here. It would be nice if it was a little bigger, though, for playing stuff like PS2 and GameCube, but then you take the pocketability and everything else out of it. So I see where they were going there. You can play 3DS on here. I didn't enjoy playing 3DS on here. You might find it that you like it. Some games run pretty well. Others don't. You're just going to have to play around with it, and it's kind of a bonus if it works or not. But I would say if you have $100 and you're looking for something to play GBA on, or you want to do some Tate mode stuff, which is specifically why I got this device, and it was not provided to me, so just so you are aware, I actually picked this up on my own so that I was able to take a look at it. I am, again, a big proponent of the MagicX devices, so I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to take a look at this for you, and I apologize for not getting this review out sooner. I've been a little under the weather, so we'll talk about that on a different video. But that's all I got for you today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends because sharing is caring. It also helps grow the channel, and we're just trying to build a little community over here, you know? All kinds of fun stuff. I will throw a bunch of links down on my thingamabob, both where you can get this device from MagicX. If you want to help the channel out, that will be an affiliate link. Also, links to anything that we have written about it on the website, and a couple of links to some other videos from MagicX devices that are using the Dawn launcher in case you decide that you would like to learn more about the Dawn launcher than what I provided in this video right here. Appreciate you taking the time. Once you're done with all that, there are some videos that are going to pop up here on the screen that Google chose for you. So take a look at one of those. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you got this far, hit the button. Come on, what are you doing? It's not going to hurt you, but that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.